What's up, Green Bay Packers fans? Welcome back, and as always, thank you for joining me. My name is Paul Brettel. Today, we're here to discuss the Green Bay Packers' final injury report prior to their win and end game with the Chicago Bears on Sunday. But first, hit like on the video, hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. I do greatly appreciate it. As always, you can find all my work over at Packers Wire, and you can follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. So, like I said, Matt LaFleur, Green Bay Packers announced their final injury designations following Friday's practice. So we're here to break it down, talk about the potential impact that all of this could have on Sunday's game and what you need to know. So let's start at the wide receiver position. Christian Watson, Jayden Reed, Dontayvion Wicks, all listed as questionable. Christian Watson practiced in a limited fashion on Wednesday and Thursday. He did not practice on Friday. However, Matt LaFleur said that was to give him some rest. He said he had 2 good days of practice on Wednesday and Thursday. Christian Watson said that this day off is what they felt would be best to hopefully make sure that he is available for Sunday's game, and had the chance to talk to Christian Watson at his locker on Wednesday, and he feels good, at least at that time, about where he's at, and it seems like things have continued to trend in the right direction in terms of him being available. Said he feels really good about where he's at heading into this game. And of course, Green Bay Packers always are going to want to have Christian Watson on the field. There's that big play ability that he brings, but there's also the attention that he draws with his speed, with his size, that creates better spacing, spreads the defense out, and creates opportunities for others within this offense. That's something Jayden Reed talked about earlier this week, just Watson's presence, the gravity that he brings to this offense with the attention that he draws. And as we look up at the upcoming matchup that the Packers have with the Chicago Bears, like I said, having that element's always important, but it feels particularly important against this Bears defense. Chicago has generated 22 interceptions this season. That's the most in the NFL. They've done a really good job at muddying things up over the middle of field. Where they've shown that they can be susceptible is on the deeper boundary routes, on the sidelines. And of course, like we just talked about, when you have a presence like Christian Watson who can attack those parts of the field, whose presence can, again, create better spacing, create more opportunities over the middle, again, because of that attention that he draws, potential for opportunities elsewhere for others to capitalize on. So hopefully the Green Bay Packers will have Christian Watson during Sunday's game, because as we just talked about, he can have a massive impact on it, even if the ball isn't coming in his direction. As far as Jayden Reed goes, he practiced in a limited fashion all 3 days this week. He said that he had an x-ray following Sunday's game against the Vikings, where he exited early with a chest injury. Said everything x-ray related came back fine. Says he's taking it day to day, but feels good. So again, seems to be trending in the right direction, as does Dontayvion Wicks, who was a full participant during the final 2 days of practice. So again, wide receiver room seems to be, fingers crossed, we'll see what happens on Sunday, but seems to be getting healthy at just the right time for the Green Bay Packers. And if these 3 players can go, this is going to be the first time since week 13 that the Packers have had their top 4 receivers available in this game. And even going back, that's about a month ago now, not a huge amount of time, but this current iteration of the wide receiver room, where you have, more experience, more reps from Malik Heath. You have the emergence of Bo Melton. This current wide receiver room hasn't seen, even though these guys have played together, necessarily the full impact that is currently being experienced by this Packers offense, by this Packers wide receiver room. And so obviously potential for a massive impact on the game, that goes without saying. But Jordan Love, regardless of who's been on the field, who's been available, has continued to perform, continued to play at a high level. And you would hope that, again, when he has his full complement of receivers around him, that's only going to help things and continue to progress things for this Packers offense. Next up, tight end Luke Musgrave. He is listed as questionable. Matt LaFleur was asked about Musgrave's availability for Sunday, and on Thursday, LaFleur said that it was a realistic possibility that he could be out there. He practiced in a limited fashion this entire week, which is the same as what he did the week prior. And if Luke Musgrave can be available for this game, the Packers are going to have him and Tucker Kraft together. We just talked about the difference in the wide receiver room from a month ago to now, and having all those guys together. Well, in the tight end room, when we're talking about the progress of the development that Tucker Kraft has had during this time without Luke Musgrave, I mean, it is night and day. And Tucker Kraft even admitted that at his locker when asked, what's the biggest difference now And when you've gone through these few weeks of being the guy versus the start of the season. And Kraft said it's been night and day. He said looking back at what he put on tape, specifically from a blocking perspective early on in the season, makes him want to puke. It's something that he wished wasn't out there. Matt LaFleur has complimented Kraft too for his growth, for his development, saying he's one of the most improved players on the team. Adam Stenavich talked about how there isn't anyone who works harder off the field than Tucker Kraft to get prepared. And I think we've definitely seen that just in how fast his trajectory, his progress has gone during this stretch where he's had to be the guy at the tight end position. And so if you can couple that, the progress he's made with Luke Musgrave, I mean, there's just, and Stenavich mentioned this, it just feels like there's a ton of possibilities for what the Packers can do from a play calling perspective, what Matt LaFleur is going to be able to draw up. And it's not as if we didn't see Kraft and Musgrave on the field together. The Packers have run a ton of 12 personnel, a ton of 2 tight end sets this season. But again, they didn't have, when they were doing that, this version of Tucker Kraft, that version of Luke Musgrave combined. And individually, I mean, they can stress defenses. We've seen that from each of them respectively. But when you put them together, I mean, we hear Matt LaFleur talk about the illusion of complexity. And in short, it's keeping defenses off balance, keeping them guessing. And you're doing that by running a variety of plays from just a few personnel packages. So you're able to create mismatches. You're running plays that start out similar, but end up looking quite different. Again, causing some chaos, causing some confusion for the defense. And when you have 2 tight ends who can or have been capable, willing blockers in the run game, you have Tucker Kraft who can make plays with the ball in his hands, yards after the catch. It's been one of the best tight ends since week 12 in terms of picking up yards after the catch. You have Luke Musgrave who can stretch the field vertically. That's just a ton of stress on the opposing defense. Because those guys can impact the run game, they can impact the passing game. When the offense is on the field, the defense is lining up, there isn't that tell. There isn't that, tipping of the hand from the Green Bay Packers perspective in terms of, all right, what's the play going to be? What's the tight end's responsibility likely going to be? Because you have guys who can attack all parts of the field in the passing game. They could be in his blockers. And so again, from the defense's perspective, it just makes it really difficult to gauge what's going to take place. And having these guys together, again, opens up a whole new part of the playbook for Matt LaFleur if he's able to have both these guys available for Sunday's game. And keep in mind, Luke Musgrave is still on IR, so if he's going to be available, he has to be activated off of it, added back to the 53-man, which means a roster cut is going to have to take place. 2 names to keep our eyes on if that's going to happen. Both at the cornerback position, Robert Rochell and David Long. Robert Rochell is the name that first came to mind as I was thinking about this. David Long is the former 3rd-round pick, been in the NFL. In terms of, he's still 25 years old. In terms of just taking a swing on some upside, on some potential, sticking with David Long to see what he can do having a full offseason with this team would make sense. But if we look back at snap counts from week 17, the reason that I added Long to this list is he only played 1 special team snap. Robert Rochell ended up playing 12. Benny Sapp ended up playing 10. So in terms of immediate contributions, something to be mindful of as well. So if the Packers activate Luke Musgrave off IR, they are going to have to make a corresponding roster move to make room for him. Those are 2 names that I'd be keeping my eyes on. Next up, we'll lump Elgton Jenkins, A.J. Dillon, and Emmanuel Wilson all together with this one. So Elgton Jenkins is listed as questionable. A.J. Dillon's already been ruled out. And Emmanuel Wilson, also on injured reserve, is questionable as well. Elgton Jenkins suffered an ankle injury in the Minnesota game, left in the 4th quarter, I believe it was. And he did not practice on Wednesday or Thursday. Good news, he was back out there on Friday. He did speak with the media on Thursday and said, we'll be good. So sounds like, anyways, obviously we'll see what comes of it on Sunday, but sounds like Jenkins feels that he's in a good place where hopefully he can be on the football field. A.J. Dillon, as already mentioned, is going to be out for this game. This is because of a stinger that he suffered against the Vikings. This is not because of the thumb injury that did look like it got re-aggravated in that Vikings game. And then Emmanuel Wilson, questionable as well, has a shoulder injury that he sustained against the LA Chargers. He's been on injured reserve since then. And just like with Luke Musgrave, if the Packers are going to put Emmanuel Wilson, have him available for Sunday's game. He has to be added back to the 53, and that means a roster cut has to happen. So if both Musgrave and Wilson are going to be available on Sunday, it means the Packers got to make 2 cuts, or if there's someone that could be placed on IR, there's no one that comes to mind off the top of my head, they are going to have to create some roster space for those 2. Now, this Bears run defense has been really, really good all season. In general, over the last 5-6 weeks, the Bears defense as a whole has been playing at a really high level. They're allowing just 15.6 points per game. Over the last 5 games, opponents' passer rating at the quarterback position is the lowest in football during this last 5 games. Again, Bears defense is playing really good football, but that run defense specifically, that's an area that they've been performing well at all season. They're allowing just 3.7 yards per rush on the year. Now for the Green Bay Packers, Aaron Jones has been back full capacity these last 2 weeks, 20 plus carries in each of the last 2 games, 120 plus rushing yards in each of the last 2 games. The Packers run game has been the best, looked the best as it has all season. So going to be an important matchup, obviously. Jordan Love talked about it after the Panthers game, after that performance from Aaron Jones in his first game back from injury, and just how the burden that when you have Jones on the field playing at that level, the burden that takes off of really everyone, opens up opportunities in the passing game. The defense, you're staying, when you're picking up those chunk yardage, 5, 6, 7 yards, you're staying ahead of the sticks, keeps the defense off balance because now you can run on a given play. You can pass on a given play. You're not stuck in those obvious passing situations. So when you got Aaron Jones playing at the level that he's playing at, obviously we know the playmaking ability that he brings, but it just opens up so much opportunities for everyone else within the offense, specifically the passing game. And if the defense wants to try to shrink the field now because they're putting more of an emphasis on the run, creates opportunities for those downfield throws, sets up play action where Jordan Love has been really, really efficient, really, really effective this season. So something to be mindful of because this is going to be a really important matchup within this game. And the Bears, like I said, have been very good against the run. Next up, we'll flip to the defensive side of the ball. Preston Smith is listed as questionable. Isaiah McDuffie is doubtful after suffering a concussion against Minnesota. It's not very often that we see Preston Smith on the injury report, let alone have an injury designation. We're coming up on the end of Preston Smith's 9th NFL season, and he has missed just 1 game. Came in week 7 of 2021 when he was with the Green Bay Packers when they were playing Washington, which was his previous team. So it's unusual for Preston Smith to be in this situation. He did not practice on Wednesday or Thursday. Like Elgton Jenkins, he was back out there in a limited fashion on Friday, and Preston Smith has provided a steady presence up front at the edge rusher position for the entire season. At edge rusher specifically, he's been the most consistent run defender on this Packers team. And the last 2 weeks, he's been really, really, really disruptive from a pass rush perspective. He's generated 9 quarterback pressures just in these 2 games, has a sack, and then that forced fumble on Jaren Hall before halftime. Big point in the game, allowed the Packers to go put up a touchdown before halftime and really just blow that game open. So Preston Smith's playing at a high level. Isaiah McDuffie has done an excellent job filling in this season for Devondre Campbell or for Quay Walker, depending on who hasn't been out there. But also of note, not just who's on the injury report, but who's off of it. Devondre Campbell is not listed with an injury designation. He was a full participant in all 3 practices this week, which tells us that he's going to be out there. So the Packers are going to have Devondre Campbell and Quay Walker on the field together on Sunday. And just like we talked about on the Packers side of the ball on offense, the run game, Aaron Jones going up against a very good Bears run defense. The Packers run defense is going to be tested against his Bears rushing offense. Justin Fields, we know about the mobility aspect that he brings. He's second in the NFL in rush attempts at quarterback. He's second in the NFL in rushing yards at the quarterback position. And we've seen previously mobile quarterbacks give this Packers defense fits. Justin Fields himself in week 1 had 59 rushing yards. Justin Herbert had 73. Tommy DeVito had 71. Obviously the goal is to keep him in the pocket, and to do that, the Packers are going to have a good push up the middle. They're going to have to be disciplined with their rushing lanes, with their gap assignments to not create opportunities for him to escape, get outside the pocket, because that's where things can really unwind for this Packers defense, and he can really, really stress them, whether it's taken off with open field or now the Vikings receivers, DJ Moore specifically, they're ad-libbing, they're going off script, and the Packers are just going to have to do their best to keep up with them in those situations. On top of that, the Bears run game, Khalil Herbert, it's averaging 4.9 yards per rush this season. It's been one of the more elusive backs in football. Roschon Johnson is averaging 4.3 yards per carry. D'Onta Foreman has almost as many rushes of 10 or more yards as Khalil Herbert does. So they have a trio of running backs they're going to lean on, and they get the wide receivers involved in the run game as well. The Bears wide receivers have 17 rush attempts this season by three different receivers. All three of those receivers have a rush of at least 15 yards, and all three are averaging over 5 yards per attempt. So the Packers are going to be stressed in this area. They have been better. This, as we know, this run defense runs very hot and cold. Feels like it's either all or nothing. And right now, they've been putting together some strong weeks. Tampa Bay game, the Carolina game, they held both those teams to under 4 yards per rush. Minnesota averaged barely over 4 yards per carry against Green Bay, but in part because of the offense putting up so many points quickly, the Vikings were never able to lean on that aspect. They only put up 67 rushing yards total. So Packers run defense has been better as of late, but like Joe Barry said, it's all about consistency. We've seen times throughout the season, and we're kind of experiencing one now, where we see this run defense able to hold its own, where they're sound tackling, where they're keeping the quarterback in the pocket, where they're getting off blocks, they're filling gaps, they're maintaining the correct, their gap integrity, the right responsibilities. We've also seen times where several of those things, one of those things, all of those things are just a complete mess. And that's how you end up with 4 games where the opposing team has rushed for over 200 yards. So this is a Bears team that wants to run the football. They averaged, I believe, over 32 rush attempts per game. It's the second most in football this season. And so that's what they want to do. The Packers are going to have to do their best to take that away. But the chess match, as Matt LaFleur often talks about, is, this is a Bears team that'll still push the ball downfield. Justin Fields, in terms of drop back rate of passes of 20 or more yards, ranks 4th. DJ Moore ranks 2nd out of all receivers in targets of 20 or more yards this season. So it's going to be that balance, because obviously on a one given play, you can't take away the run and take away the deep ball. You got to pick and choose. So again, it's that chess match. Situationally, what's the down and distance dictating? What's the game flow dictating? What do you think the Bears are going to do? Are they going to zig when you think they're going to zag? And so all of that's going to be a factor, but I believe it all starts for this Packers defense in finding success with stopping the run, putting Justin Fields, putting this offense behind the sticks, obvious passing situations where your pass rush can hopefully pin its ears back, get after the quarterback. I would like to see, just like Joe Barry did last week, some more creative blitzes. We saw him send Keyshawn Nixon on a blitz. We saw him sending both middle linebackers on a blitz, and the Packers were very effective in doing so. So I'd like to see them force the issue, put some of that pressure on Justin Fields, because when under duress, he's completing less than 50% of his passes. He's averaging just 4.9 yards per pass attempt. So that is the way to get after him. But again, in order to do so, you got to stop the run. Lastly, before we wrap up here, Luke Tenuta, he's listed as questionable. Like Musgrave, like Emmanuel Wilson, he's on IR. I just don't see the Packers activating him off of it. It's not as if he's going to go in and start. He's not even going to be one of the immediate backups either. And in order to get him active for Sunday, you would have to make a roster cut. And so I just don't see that happening. Lastly, Rudy Ford is listed as out. We're going to see Darnell Savage, Jonathan Owens starting at safety again. Anthony Johnson is going to be the third option. We might see him on the field when the Packers are in dime as that third safety option. Last thing I'll say, Darnell Savage, he was back last week, and the secondary as a whole, it was just very, very sound performance. Everyone knew where they needed to be. As Vikings ran some of those mesh concepts, they were passing off the receivers from zone to zone. The communication felt very sound. And I don't think it's a coincidence that happened when Darnell Savage was back in the mix. That's something that Matt LaFleur has complimented him on several occasions throughout this season. So there you have it, my friends. My quick thoughts on the Packers injury report. As always, I appreciate you tuning in. Hit like on the video, hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. I greatly appreciate it. You can follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel, and you can find all my work over at Packers Wire. So until next time, friends, take care, stay safe, and as always, go Pack Go.